Hello, my beautiful YouTube friends. So, you've just finished your PhD, or maybe you're thinking about doing a PhD, but you don't know what comes after it. So, what comes after a PhD? If you're new to this channel, please remember to subscribe and hit the bell notification if that's what you do, because I'm going to be talking about my PhD career advice from the stuff that I've learned, as well as startups, because I'm a startup founder, and then also content marketing, because that's something I love doing, and creating videos and all that sort of stuff. And I'd love for you to consume all of that delicious content. So please remember to subscribe. Okay, so the way that I see this is that after a PhD, you really have two broad options. Let's talk about the most obvious option right now. The most obvious option is to do a postdoc. So that's a post-PhD, shortened to postdoctorate, shortened to postdoc. Anyway, so postdocs are what you can do after a PhD, and it's when you start to sort of look for your own funding, you start to kind of enter the academic funnel a little bit more. So you'll normally end up working under a person who's got some money to do some research. They'll advertise for a postdoc position, and that means you will be responsible for collecting all of the data and doing all of the research, or be on the team that's going to collect the data for that particular project. So you're still not necessarily doing your own research, but you are still sort of doing what you've done in your PhD. You're just doing it even deeper, even more, and probably more responsible for the administration, the outcomes, the key performance indicators, and making sure the project moves along in terms of doing the things that need to be done. So a postdoc really is the path of least resistance. And by that, I mean, obviously, when you're doing a PhD, your supervisors may say to you, hey, let's do more of this. I've got some money, let's do some more, or I'll apply for some money. And because you're already in the academic bubble, it can really seem like the best option, when really you've not explored anything else outside of what you're currently doing. And you kind of convinced yourself, yes, this is right for me. So I would say at the end of your PhD, the path of least resistance really is a postdoc, but is it right for you? That is something you really need to take seriously and consider based on what you like to do, where you want to go in life, and the sort of lifestyle that you're willing to commit to, because academia can be really tough. So a postdoc can go from anywhere between like 6 months to 3 years to 5 years. So it really is starting to get on that academic treadmill. And there's even something called the postdoc treadmill. And a number of my friends have been on this. And the longest postdoc treadmill I think I've seen is like 11 or 12 years, where they just do one postdoc after another, after another, after another. And it can just go on and on and on and on. And that's kind of the worrying thing about doing a postdoc, is if you have no plan to apply for grants, your own money, then really you can be sort of locked into this lifestyle where your job is dependent on someone else getting money to employ you. And I don't know about you, but I would feel a little bit uneasy about doing that for too long. A postdoc is great for gathering extra skills, applying for grants, giving you a little bit of breather room, maybe do some teaching as well to build up your academic career. But ultimately, it is something you need to leave at some point, and that leaving is really, really tough. A few of my friends, I did 3 postdocs, and that took me through about 7 years. I ended up getting my own money, doing some my own experiments, getting awards and grants, and sort of slowly, like, I wasn't a great academic, but I was good enough to kind of like pedal and tread water for a long time. But really, after that amount of time, I really started to fall out of love with academia, realizing that this would be my reality for a long period of time if I didn't apply for my own funding, get my own grants. And ultimately, that was the reason I left academia, is because I was like, I don't want this current life for very much longer. And if you get your own grant money, then you're just extending the postdoc for a little bit more. Anyway, so look, I don't mean to be down on it, because I think for a lot of people, it can be a really important step to get in that academic career. But for a lot of people, I think the path of least resistance thing locks them in to doing a postdoc, when really there's plenty of other options that may actually suit them way better than anything to do with academia. Now, the second broad category is obviously outside of academia, outside of the academic system, and outside of the ivory towers. I think this is completely underplayed as you're going through a PhD, because ultimately the system hasn't changed for a long period of time. A PhD in the past was to train you up to become an academic. And the systems in that process haven't changed, even though there's nothing that you can do at the end. There's no academic jobs for you. So now I think there's, it's changing. There's a lot of industry-focused PhDs with building up networks in industry as part of your PhD. But things are slowly changing, but arguably not changing fast enough. During a PhD, you should really start thinking about those next steps. And I think you've got to be absolutely honest with yourself and be like, is this something I really want to do? Is it something I'm willing to sacrifice time, money, a bit of mental health for? Because if it is, great and good for you. But it may not be, and it arguably, like I said, it's not for everyone. And so I've done a video before about PhD career changes. So I'll go put the link wherever that would appear, maybe up here, I think. So look, go and check out that one, because it shows you the roadmap that I think you need to sort of lay down and follow if you want to leave an academic career and change outside of what your PhD has trained you for. So there's a load of paths that you can take. Ultimately, when you decide, hey, I'm going to leave academia, you can do a whole range of things. You can do so many things, and really it's about you deciding what fits best for your personality, what you enjoy doing, because you have to enjoy the process of whatever job or career or thing you end up doing, because you'll be doing it for a very long time. So broadly, I think industry is a good spot. So you can actually find industry jobs where you use the same sort of research skills that you've built up during your PhD, and you use them in a private industry setting. So when I left my PhD, I went straight into Dyno Nobel, which is an explosives company. It was interesting. I went from solar cells to explosives, so hippie to blowing up the earth. But I really enjoyed that job. I learned a lot from it. And ultimately, it wasn't the right fit for me. So I ended up going back to academia after that job for a little bit. I say a little bit, it's like 7 years. But there's one option, is looking for R&D positions, so research and development positions in an industry. And obviously my experience is all around the STEM field. So I know for humanities and languages and medical PhDs, it could be a little bit different. The second place that I've seen a lot of success is people leaving their PhD and going into government positions. So that's policy making, that's translational sort of job where you look at helping researchers, or you look at using the outcomes of research to inform policy. And I know a lot of friends who have gone into that and they've really enjoyed the process. And look, if that is the right fit for you, I've not got a lot of experience with government stuff, but a lot of people like the security of a government job. And because of that, I think it's very popular with PhDs. So this one is pretty interesting to me because it's where a lot of STEM professionals end up, and that is intellectual property and intellectual property law. So when I was finishing up my last postdoc, I was actually considering, I was like, I wonder if I could do intellectual property, becoming an IP, patent attorney. And it does involve another 3 years at a university learning, doing exams, And oh God, after so many years in a university, getting up to a PhD, I really didn't want to do any more exams. I was done. So I did actually explore that for a little bit, but I know a number of people in Australia that have finished their PhD, and every year the intellectual property office in Canberra, they accept applications from PhDs, and it's one of the rare careers where you do actually need a PhD to understand what's going on. So it is a great option if you like writing, if you like checking things, if you're into kind of the details of your PhD work, then it can be a really rewarding career. And like I said, I even started to explore it for myself, but ultimately decided that the introverted nature of it wasn't quite right for me. Okay, another option that I've seen outside of academia is teaching. That's either teaching as a teaching focused academic at a university or retraining to teach high schools. In Australia, you need a 2 years master's, I think. So it is about going back and retraining, going back to uni again. But it can be an incredibly rewarding career. My partner's a teacher. She absolutely loves it. And I would be lying if I said that I didn't consider it at some point. Ultimately, it wasn't the right fit for me at the time, so I never kind of pursued. But I did look at going back to uni to get a teaching qualification. And it's where a lot of people enjoy the communication aspect. Teaching is such a rewarding career, and I've seen lots of people transition because they enjoy the tutoring, the training, the sharing their passion. It really puts you back in touch with why you started doing a science degree in the first place. And it just really kind of, yeah, it can be really, really rewarding to help the next generation of scientists. So, yeah, consider teaching if that is something you like. And the last thing I want to talk about, an option that I've seen quite a lot of success in, is PhDs helping out universities with stuff like grant writing. So a lot of PhDs end up going into the research office. And the reason for that, I think, is because during your PhD, you learn about all the ins and outs of how to get grants, how to apply for grants. You know about what makes a grant successful. You understand the science behind it. And all of that comes together in a nice, valuable package for universities to employ PhDs as grant writers, or working in the research office to support researchers so that they're more likely to get grants, funding, and publications even. So look, those skills that you learn in your PhD are directly applicable to other scientists, clearly. And so, yeah, that's one place where I've seen a number of PhD graduates go and been incredibly happy with that. One person in particular I know ended up going to Stanford University to work in their grants office. And of course, she was incredibly motivated, incredibly clever, and now is able to essentially say, I've worked at Stanford helping people get grants, and she can go anywhere. So it really, yeah, it can be really rewarding. And even though grant writing is the thing I like least about academia, if it's your bag, then that's perfect. It can be a really rewarding career. So the one thing I will say about everything that I've just talked about, these are the things you need to do to actually move past your PhD and go on to that next thing. The first thing is network. Now, networking as a scientist can seem really lame. You go to conferences, you speak to people, you pretend that you're interested in what they have to say. But outside of academia, or at least that was my experience, outside of academia, networking is so incredibly important. Networking, even online, LinkedIn is an incredible place to connect with other professionals in an industry that you feel like you want to go into. And networking really is the door that you need to open. So personally, I've found a lot of success with being introduced to people through common connections, through a network. So I say, hey, I'd love to connect with this person. I go through their LinkedIn. I look to see who we've got in common. If I'm particularly close to that person, I can say, hey, can I have a warm introduction, please? All of that is really important, and it's something that you can actually start building from the moment you start your PhD if you know where you want to end up. It is so overlooked, and I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but networking isn't about like sucking up and being weird. It's about genuinely kind of connecting and and just growing a network. If I kind of consider it like a little mesh. The more people in your mesh, your network, if you fall, there's more people to collect you and help you, and it really is like a kind of safety mechanism. Okay, another great thing that I think you should consider doing is outside of academia. The world is a strange place, and you may not be super familiar with it. So I really would advise you using your expert analytical skills that you've built throughout your PhD, and you put that towards learning about the field you want to go into. Look for keywords, get onto Google, get onto LinkedIn, and just start looking at the keywords that people are using in the career that you feel like you want to go towards. That's so important because you are going to be entering a different world. And so really you've got to kind of stalk that world a little bit to work out what works, what doesn't, who's in that, who are the big players, who are the smaller players, who's up and coming. All of that will really help you when you come to speak to your network, because you'll seem informed, you'll look knowledgeable, and importantly, you'll look enthusiastic about the field that you're going into. One of the biggest things that I think you should consider when leaving a PhD program is, do you want to do more study? It can seem insane that people would want to do more studying after a PhD. But I know people who have found incredibly rewarding careers by retraining or building up skills in a different area. And it wasn't something I really wanted to do. I couldn't imagine going from being a lecturer to being lectured. I don't know if that's an ego thing or what, but I really did not like the idea of sitting in lectures or learning again, having to do assignments. I was done. But for a lot of people, particularly early PhD graduates, so people that are very young, retraining for 3 more years or a couple of years, or doing a master's or diploma in whatever you kind of are attracted to, then that can be really good way of just slingshotting you into a new career. So yeah, that's something you really need to consider is, are you willing to do more study? And if you are, what extent are you going to do? You know, if you go back to medicine, it can be another 5, 6, 7 years. And at the end of a PhD journey, that may just be too much for you. So even a diploma, I actually did a number of small things. Even outside of university, I did a radio announcing course, I did a videography course, I did a lot of online learning, I learned to code, I did some marketing stuff. So I really just was like, you know what, I have no idea what I want to do. I'm going to go research and build up skills in all of these different areas, and I'm going to find out what actually appeals to me. And that's where I ended up with this, with videography, with verbalize.science. All of that kind of has been packaged up. And it was because I took a while to explore the options, and I was very privileged to have that time. But now I'm slowly finding out what I do like and don't like outside of academia. And the last thing I would say is, once you've identified what you really do and don't like and where you kind of want to take your career outside of a PhD, if it's postdoc, that's great, continue, keep doing, work hard. But outside of academia, you will almost certainly have a gap in your skills. So what you need to do is work out where those gaps are and either build up experience to fill those gaps or do further study, like I said before. So work out where the friction points are for someone who would hire you in the position that you want. Get a friend to look over it and say, you know what, for a position that you want, you're really missing out on the managerial skills, or you're really lacking any evidence about videography or content creation or whatever it is. You just need to find out, even approach someone in your network in that field and say, hey, this is my CV. Where am I missing skills? Or where's the gaps? Or why wouldn't someone want to hire me in a position based on my skills? Because that's ultimately what you need to do. You need to fill those gaps to make sure you are the prime candidate. And when you're coming off the back of a PhD, it can be really tough to find the motivation to relearn some things. But you are an awesome learner because you've got this far. So please continue and make sure you're working towards a goal that you know that you want and a career that you're going to find fulfilling. That's the most important thing out of all of this. Do not listen to supervisors. Do not listen to career academics. Do not listen to anyone inside academia if you want to leave academia, because you need to speak to people with the experience, the people that have made the leap into other things. And yeah, that's the biggest thing, is don't take the path of least resistance. Look somewhere else. Go spread those wings. Be free, my beautiful PhD students. So let me know in the comments what you would add to that list. How would you leave a PhD? What's next after a PhD? What other choices are there? What have you done that you really like and you would recommend to other people? That would be really helpful to everyone else that sees this video. So if you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to this channel. I do PhD, startups, content marketing, videography stuff, vlogging maybe, who knows. But I'd love for you to get all of the stuff that I produce straight into your feed. So please remember to hit that notification bell as well, if that's still a thing. I have no idea. I'm not really up to date with all this stuff. But I shall see you in the next video. Get in my beard.